Okay, so I'm actually just inserting this here after I already recorded my video, and it's a little bit random, but I feel like it's still somewhat relevant to the topic, but I just had to talk about it for just a second here. So I came across an article, apparently from Windows Central, that's claiming that Crackdown 3, the Wrecking Zone multiplayer mode, apparently will not allow you to play with your friends. You won't be able to party up and matchmake and play with your friends. Is this a joke? Like, this has to be a joke, right? Like, just when you think things cannot possibly get any worse, they actually get worse. And I am just absolutely baffled by this. How can this be a thing? Microsoft, come on. Like, this is what we're talking about here. This is the kind of stuff you need to get it straight. You need to get it together. Alright, guys, enjoy the video. So in today's video, what we're going to do is talk about why it seems that Sony will most likely, and to a lot of people probably already has, won 2019. And I don't mean to make that sound so console warish, but unfortunately there's really no other way for me to talk about it, I guess, at least for me, because when you're just talking about the games, when you're just thinking about the games that console owners can look forward to this year or gamers can look forward to, I think it's safe to say that Sony probably has definitely the better lineup. And I think that there's just a lot of people who are looking at what we know from Microsoft and just aren't feeling as good about it. But I also want to emphasize that there is still hope for Microsoft, not necessarily in the way you may be thinking. I'm not sitting here saying that, oh, you guys wait, Microsoft's going to announce multiple games this year that are going to release this year. No, it's not going to work like that. The truth is we kind of already know what to expect from Microsoft and to a certain extent what to expect from Sony, and that is exactly why Sony has pretty much already won 2019 in terms of game releases, in my opinion anyway, that will be coming. So first up, we have Days Gone, and the thing about Days Gone is I think it's definitely going to be a much bigger game in the sense of how people receive it and how people feel about it and the excitement surrounding it than, say, a game like Crackdown 3. I think it's going to do much better. That's not to say that there aren't people who are apprehensive, because there are many people who are apprehensive about Days Gone. It's still unproven, but it looks promising to a lot of people. But there's also many who just feel it's another zombie game and they're just not interested in that. But from what I've seen in the recent trailers that Sony's been releasing for Days Gone, it seems that there is a lot of excitement surrounding this game, and it has a lot of appeal. So I think that that's going to do really well, and that's a game that I'm personally excited for, and I think it looks pretty good. And then we also have Dreams. We know Dreams is confirmed for 2019. It's definitely not up there with games like Days Gone and other games that Sony has, but it's still a game that I think serves a certain audience, and there's definitely an audience there for this game. There's a lot of people who love Media Molecule and are eagerly awaiting this game, so that's definitely going to be another good one for Sony. Another smaller game that I don't know much about, Dream Genie. Apparently that's supposed to come out this year as well. I'm not really sure about that game. I don't know if there's any hype surrounding it or not. I haven't been following it, so I can't say. So that's why I'm not going to talk much about it. But then we have the big ones, and I've talked about this before, but I think it's important to understand that it's probably not going to go down the way maybe some people, and I don't think many people envision it this way. There are probably some people who actually believe that The Last of Us Part 2 and Death Stranding are both going to release in the same year, that being 2019. That's just not going to happen. I mean, it'd be absolutely insanity if that happened, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think the best we can get is probably one of them. I think it's safe to say that one or the other will be dropping before 2020. And which one that ends up being, I don't know. I really don't know. But what I can say for sure is that when either one of those drops, that alone is going to trump anything that Microsoft has, especially if it's The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I'm a huge Kojima fan, and I am really eager for Death Stranding, but I can't deny, especially after playing The Last of Us, just the appeal that The Last of Us Part 2 has, and it's basically Sony's ace, you know what I mean? And whenever that drops, it's just going to solidify them in that year as they had the better games. A lot of people would say that they've had the better games for many years, and that's probably true, but that trend is going to continue. So if one of those launches before the end of the year, then that alone, in my opinion, seals the fact that Sony definitely has the better year. They have 2019 on lock, but that doesn't mean that Xbox has it as bad as some may think, or as maybe some may believe I'm making it out to be. Because the reason why I do say there's hope is because, well, we know that there's going to be some people who enjoy Crackdown 3. I think most of you guys already know my feelings on it. I'm still going to try it. I'm still going to give it a chance. But it's safe to say that Crackdown 3 is another game that's just not going to do well for Microsoft, and it's not going to help them. It's not going to boost their image. And the image problem that Microsoft has, and they have had for a long time, putting everything else aside, and I'm just trying to focus solely on the games in this video because I do think the games are the most important aspect of any platform, honestly. They've had a quality problem. The image of low quality that is what people associate now when it comes to Xbox games and Microsoft's games. And that's the worst image to have. It really is. And games like Crackdown 3, unfortunately, are just not helping that. So we know Crackdown 3 is coming, and I honestly feel like Microsoft's going to have to push past that, because after that, we have Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And this game, I think, is going to be a good one for sure. I think there's a lot of people who are going to be excited for it, and I think it's going to be received very well based off of, the first game. For me, it's not something I'm super interested in, but I know there are a lot of people who are very interested in it. But unfortunately, it just doesn't have that same... even though it will be higher quality, I do think that that's what matters most, but it's not going to be enough, is what I'm trying to say, to carry Xbox throughout the majority of 2019. And depending on when that game releases, we're going to have to wait and see how well it really will do, and is it going to actually help Xbox at all. I think it will definitely help, but the question is, how much will it help? And then we have Gears 5, or Gears of War 5. And Gears 5, for as awesome as it looks, in my opinion, to an extent, it's just people are not as excited about Gears as they once were. And that's just the truth of the matter. That's the harsh reality. If you want to, I think it's safe to say that Gears 5 is probably the closest thing that Microsoft has coming in 2019 that we know of, but I'm not holding out hope at all for any sudden announcements of games that are going to be launching before the end of this year. I think that's extremely unrealistic. I think Gears 5 is the closest thing Microsoft has that can even remotely compete with Sony's higher tier games, like what some would consider The Last of Us 2 and Death Stranding. Now, don't confuse my words here. I'm not saying it's on the same level. I'm saying it's the closest thing that Microsoft has that can remotely compete. Because in my opinion, especially after playing The Last of Us, Gears doesn't cut it. Gears is great for the people who love it, but it's like Microsoft just doesn't have these games that can, like, their trump cards. They don't have the aces. They just don't. That's not to say that Gears 5 won't do really well. It probably will, and I think it could be very well received. And I think, depending on how they handle the game, it could easily be the best game that Xbox gets this year. But that's unfortunately not the most exciting thing for people. Another Gears of War game, people want more. And this is where, when I say there is still hope for Xbox, what I'm referring to is E3. And no, this is not me saying wait for E3. I'm simply saying that Microsoft has attempted the closest thing they've gotten to trying to correct this image problem they have with quality and just not being able to release higher tier games. The closest thing they've gotten to correcting that is announcing new studios. They just rebranded their Microsoft Studios. Now they're calling it Xbox Game Studios because they really want to emphasize the game aspect. And that's all really good stuff. And, I've talked many, many times in the past about Microsoft Studios, how I think it's great that they're acquiring more. But that doesn't mean we're going to get amazing games. There's a lot of work to be done. And this is where, when I say there's hope, I'm not saying everybody should be waiting here with bated breath saying, oh man, this is it. This is it. I've done that for too long and I'm just not doing it anymore. Instead, I'm going to say that I know that Microsoft is going to be announcing new games at E3 this year. And I'm not talking about, another Halo, Gears, Forza. I'm talking about something from Ninja Theory, Playground Games, their new RPG game that they're working on, and possibly maybe a few other things here and there. And this is where, if Microsoft, especially since Sony's not going to be at E3, here's the thing, just because Sony's not going to be at E3, if they release Death Stranding before the end of this year, that's what Microsoft's going to have to compete with. And unfortunately for Microsoft, Sony's in the type of position where they don't have to go to E3, they can just release Death Stranding, and that will be enough to kick Xbox to the side with the way things are right now. That's just the reality of it. So what Microsoft really needs to do, what Xbox really needs to do, if they really want to be able to compete at all this year, obviously continue with Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Gears 5, but what it's really going to come down to is the games that they announced at E3 this year, and whether or not that's going to genuinely get people excited, because I can tell you that people were not very excited about the games announced at Microsoft's E3 2018 conference. I mean, the only new games we really got were Ori and I can't even remember if Ori and the Will of the Wisps was announced before that. I believe it was, but I think Gears 5 was like the biggest game. There was a Battletoads announcement, but we haven't heard anything since. And I hate to break it to Microsoft, but that's not going to compete with games like Death Stranding and The Last of Us Part 2. So what people really want, they want to see, you've been putting all this effort in studios, Microsoft. You've been talking about how you got to get it right. You got to do better when it comes to games. People are going to be frustrated coming off of Crackdown 3, at least a lot of people are. And so they're going to be looking to E3 and saying, are you going to at least show me something to give me hope going into the future that you're going to do better with the games? Because for as much disdain as people have towards Xbox, including myself at some points, the thing that matters most to gamers is the games. And that's just a fact. People want amazing games. They want good games. And that's why, honestly, they get so frustrated with Xbox, because Xbox just hasn't been doing it. They haven't been delivering it. And there are a lot of people who feel good about Microsoft's pursuit of trying to improve this. But again, when we look at Sony in 2019 versus Microsoft in 2019 and the games we can expect to get this year, Sony already has it on lock. That's just the fact of the matter. And I've said it before that this is just the final year of this current generation where Microsoft just has to ride it out, and they need to just continue to just lay down and take it, honestly. And the only time they really need to be able to rise up and show that, hey, we're still worth caring about in the gaming space, gamers are going to want to pay attention to us, is E3. And I'm not saying wait for E3. Again, I'm just simply saying that that's the only hope there is for Microsoft, in my opinion, because believe me when I tell you, and this is the last thing I'll say, there are a lot of gamers who are truly anticipating that at this year's E3, this is when Microsoft actually comes out and proves why people are going to want to remain invested, why people are going to want to care. And the only way they're going to be able to successfully do that is by showing amazing looking games. Not another Halo. I mean, of course, people want to see Halo Infinite, but, not all the focus on Halo, not all the focus on Gears of War, not all the focus on Forza, or smaller games that, frankly, just won't generate enough excitement. People want to see the good stuff. They want to see the big stuff. They want to see the new stuff. And I'm hoping, I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm hoping that this is the year that they can do that. And then maybe when we talk about 2020, maybe, just maybe then, there will be a different conversation where maybe Microsoft can actually compete in a more, in a higher way, on a higher level with Sony and their games. But we're going to have to wait to see. Anyway, guys, I hope you did enjoy this video. I thought it would make for an interesting conversation, kind of talking about 2019 and who do we think has it on lock. I think most people are going to agree Sony has it. All they got to do is drop either Death Stranding or The Last of Us Part 2 on top of Days Gone and Dreams, and that's it for 2019 for them. And Microsoft, they have Crackdown 3, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and Gears 5. So, yeah, that's where we stand right now. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Who do you think has 2019 on lock right now when it comes to the games? And do you have any hope at all for Microsoft going forward? Do you have any hope at all that with these recent studio acquisitions and at this year's E3, especially knowing Microsoft is going to be the only one attending, do you think we can honestly expect some maybe bigger game announcements, or are you just done? Have you just given up? I will be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Be sure to hit the bell notification icon as well, and feel free to share the video out on top of that because that also helps. But until next time, guys, take care.